Hi, everybody, and welcome back to a podcast to answer your questions on addiction, recovery, and mental health by Waismann Method Treatment Center and Rapid Detox. I'm Dwight Hurst. I'm a clinical mental health counselor and also co-host for the program. Joined today at long last, it's been a little while since we've been able to get together, by Clare Waismann, who's a registered addiction specialist and substance use disorder certified counselor. She's the founder of the Waismann Method Opioid Detoxification Specialists and Domus Retreat and Aftercare. As always, also joined by David Livingston, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist, our psychotherapist and mental health expert, and a leading expert in the areas of addiction and psychology, trauma treatment, and just recovery of all kinds. Clare, David, great to see you guys.
Great to see you. Been a while.
Yeah, been a lot going on.
Oh man, yes. For those who are out there, yes, we're of course all the stuff going on in California and the fires and everything like that. Thank goodness everyone is safe, and we are able to be back together and doing that. So yeah. And how's the at Waismann Method with the detox and everything able to be up and running and everything?
Yeah,
Everybody's
because
there.
we are in Orange County, so we operate in Orange County, so it's 45 miles south of Los Angeles.
And that worked.
We're able to keep on going.
It's an interesting thing, or even during COVID when we talked about a lot of those kinds of things, operating healthcare and everything is ongoing throughout. And it's always good to know mental health treatment and addiction recovery treatment and all the programming things. It just doesn't stop. The need for it doesn't stop either. And so it's good to know that you guys are there doing that.
I guess it's adjusting to the new reality, right? Every day we adjust to the new reality.
That is, yeah. It is that there was always that. There's always lots going on. Well, as far as our show is, we always like to be driven by questions and the answering of questions. We got a really interesting one to focus on today that I'm real excited to talk about. So today we're looking at a question that has to do with coping versus actual healing. So the question is, are we just managing mental health instead of treating it? And this is I think we're going to find a very thought-provoking and also very important question to be asking, because there are definitely a lot of times where we are just managing or in survival mode of something, and I think it is important to remember that is not the same thing as healing. So let's kick that off. What are some thoughts about this?
All right, I'll dive in. Why not? So I mean, it is an interesting topic to me, because the difference between managing something and actually healing it is, they overlap, and they can be separate, but there's a lot of overlapping. So in thinking about this question, I was just thinking about myself, and sometimes what is most personal tends to be also what is most universal. In fact, I would say that's usually the case. So here's a couple examples. So I sit a lot. I'm a therapist. I talk to people all day long. So I know for myself, when I start to feel anxious, usually what I need is to go exercise. That will usually resolve my anxiety. So whatever, because it's an imbalance, if you will. Okay, I've been sitting for too long. My body needs to move. And so once I start to do that, my anxiety goes down. I feel good again. So I've learned that about myself. So that is a ongoing process that keeps me healthy, that I've learned over many, many years. And, so I do it and it resolves, but I have to do it again and again. So I have to manage it. It's an ongoing process, right? Because, things get out of balance. And so you have to manage it, but it is also resolves it. So, and the other thing I would say is that, in terms of treatment is that, we don't choose who we are. We discover who we are. So I discovered that when I go exercise and I'm anxious, okay, that will resolve it most of the time. Okay, and we do know that about anxiety for most people, by the way. Okay, so not always though. I remember one time I was in the car with my son. He was we were running errands. We were picking up some things. He was leaving the next day, and he looked at me and said, "Dad, you seem really anxious." And I thought about it. I hadn't noticed it myself. I was like, you know what? I kind of am. And I realized in that moment, just by him asking me, oh, he's leaving. I felt very sad that he was leaving. And I could actually feel the sadness that was causing the anxiety. And so because I could feel that and it resolved it, because the sadness came to we had a tender moment, and then the anxiety moved into what it was meant to be. So you might say this is, so when you talk about treatment, you talk about a learning process in which people begin to know themselves in such a way that they know how to resolve these things that repeat in multiple ways consistently. So, really, a treatment is about figuring out who you are and what keeps you healthy. And then also being able to sort of deal with, look, if I had a bias against feeling sad, I might not have been able to get there. And I might not have been able to sort of go, oh, I'm just sad, I'm going to miss you, right? And have like that whole, no big deal, but move back into a fluid state. So I think this is the things that happen that is both curative and is also ongoing management.
I hear you. I think it's an extremely valuable point on that short-term feeling, or on that daily feeling, where I see a lot of people questioning is therapy in a whole. Like I've been in therapy for 8 years. Not me, I'm saying people say I've been in therapy for 8 years, 10 years, 15 years, and I don't feel I'm getting better. I just go to therapy and learn to cope with whatever feelings I have that day. But they don't feel they are healing. They don't feel, they kind of learn to almost resist their emotions or work through them. I think coping is an extremely important thing to learn. But I think in some instances, healing and being able to diagnose the root issue and focusing on healing while helping the patient coping with the present moment, it's important. So I see a lot of frustrations on the patients we talk to because they just feel that they are in this eternal treatment, mental health treatment. And they never get the relief. They never feel, wow, I overcame, or even sometimes I think a new perspective of viewing your life and your past and things that happened to you, being able to see with new eyes. I think our memory can get very selective, very damaged through the years. So it's a number of different factors that I think frustrate so many patients because again, they never feel they have healed. They just feel that they're coping with those kind of unwanted or uncomfortable feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And they keep on going for treatment and therapy, but there's never an end to it. So
you bring up, I think, an interesting designation between the, see, we've got on the one hand, the idea of coping would oftentimes is when we're focused on skills, strategies, kind of the try this sort of thing, the take 2 of these and call me in the morning, maybe, I don't know what it is, just basically coping and surviving each day. And then we're talking about in like that therapeutic deeper processing to where maybe we're feeling an actual shift in a way of like I'm emotionally processing in a different way, or I have processed through something to where it doesn't actively bother me as much. And I mean, what I'm picking up so far as we're talking is it's more an issue of focus and balance, I think, than it is either or, right? Because if I go and I get some kind of treatment and they don't teach me how to cope, I'm not even probably avoiding relapse or anything. I'm going through each day, and each day is going to potentially take me down and make me, regress and be self-destructive. On the other hand, if I'm only learning a set of skills, and this is where, and we have to know which programs are meant to do what things, right? But if I'm only learning a sense of skills or doing homework assignments or something like that, and that's all I'm doing, am I going to experience that more deeper healing and processing at some point? So where do I find, what is the difference between those two might be one thing to say, and then how do we balance them?
Well, yes. So I remember after I'd been licensed and I've been working, I did some a long period of training at a psychoanalytic institute, and there was a class, I think it was a 6-month class, and the title of the class was Cure. Okay, so basically it went through all of these conditions, and I'm going to give an example of one. So one of them was panic disorder. Okay, so a lot of people who struggle with addictions also suffer from different periods of panic disorder. So the cause of panic disorder is anger around dependency needs. So what that means is that people unconsciously and automatically repress their anger because it puts them in conflict with the people they depend on. Meaning, I don't want to get angry with the people I depend on because I fear it will affect my dependency on them, meaning things will get worse rather than better. Okay, that's the core conflict in it. So to treat it, all you have to do is get people to feel the anger. If the anger doesn't get repressed, it doesn't come up later on when they're relaxed as a flood of heightened experience that causes, a panic disorder. Because if you think about what anger is, it's intensity. So if you repress enough of it and it comes up as one big ball at one time, you get tachycardia, you get all the symptoms that happen during a panic attack. Okay, if you get people to feel the anger when it's happening, it doesn't become a symptom. It doesn't change the fact that they're upset about something going on in their dependency. I've seen this happen. I sent someone to see a psychiatrist once, and they needed some medicine for panic disorder. Ironically, the psychiatrist said, "Oh, look, no, you've got a history of addiction. I'm not going to give you some of the medicine that actually helps treat panic disorder." Okay, the person had a panic attack after they left the office. Again, they're angry at the psychiatrist. They can't get angry at the psychiatrist because the psychiatrist is the person they depend on, right? So you see that conflict. They have a panic attack. There's usually a history of where they grew up in a way in which that feeling was disallowed. So there's a history to it. So you start to unearth this, and the treatment is simple. You get them to feel the anger. Then it no longer ends up as a panic attack. Now they have to then navigate how to talk to their psychiatrist, or then use that to go find a different psychiatrist. Because it turns out when someone has medication, they actually have far less panic attacks because they're not in conflict. They have something they can rely on, and then the panic disorder actually goes down. Okay, so you can see how this gets complicated, but frankly, it's my job to clarify how this works. Like the class I took on Cure, help people understand, because all of a sudden they go, okay, and I'll show this to them over and over again. And by the way, they never believe me at first. They say, no, I'm not angry. I'm not this. I'm like, yeah, I know you're not. That's the problem, right? So once they start to feel it, that's all they have to do, because then it doesn't get repressed. It doesn't come out as a symptom. So so that's an example of something that's curative. for a symptom like panic disorder, which is a profound thing that people suffer from, and by the way, can increase the tendency for people to move to a substance like an opioid or something to help treat it.
But then again, is my question to you, David. Are you curing the panic attacks, or are you managing it with medication?
No.
What is triggering the panic attacks? Where is the root? Is there a therapy that, that will concentrate again while managing the panic attacks with medications, coping skills, or whatever? Is there, the importance of finding what's triggering? How can we change that so it doesn't occur in the future and doesn't need to be constantly managed, not by medication nor endless therapy?
Okay, I probably didn't explain that. So I'm going to tell you exactly how you cure it. So you get the person, so you say, how did you feel when your psychiatrist said, I'm not going to give you anything because you've got a history of addiction? Say, oh, I felt fine, I got it, so forth. Okay, no, what they actually felt is they were furious. They felt let down, but they couldn't feel it because of their history. So if you get the person to feel the anger, that they don't have to act badly or do something that is going to be destructive to them or anyone else. They just have to feel it. The feeling of the anger and helping them with that is curative of panic disorder, okay? Because it doesn't get repressed. It's the repression of it that causes a later symptom. So that is curative. And once they begin to feel that, and once they can talk about and not automatically and unconsciously repress the anger before they've even felt it. So my job is to illuminate that, help them to get them to feel it, discover all of the tendencies in the history that has added to the negation of feeling that. And once they can do that, it solves the panic disorder. They're going to be frustrated, they're going to be upset, but they will have less of a tendency to have that symptom occur. So is that clear?
It's clear. It's the anger is the sign your body is sending you that something needs attention.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that struck me there is a lot of times when we're balancing this out, coping might often involve moving away from the anger or regulating my response. Whereas the therapeutic healing process is actually going to mean facing it head on, not avoiding it. So if coping skills might be necessary, like when I'm at my job so that I don't lash out. If I'm having emotional regulation issues, I might need to use coping skills at work so that I don't, I'm being triggered and I'm going through all this. I don't want to lose my job and freak out or something or rage quit. But then when I'm in therapy, that's a time to not avoid the feeling. That's a time to hit it head on, and hopefully overall going through that, then the panic anxiety will go down to where I don't need the coping skills while I'm at work because I'm not as triggered. Did I do that right, David?
Yeah, look, I would say one of the things we have got more wrong than anything else, okay, is that we treat anger as a negative emotion. I mean, when I hear that, I think, okay, well, that's the worst thing we could possibly do for people and our culture. It's great for my business. It's terrible for addiction. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's right. Because the goal isn't to walk around angry all the time, by the way. That isn't the goal. The goal is to take all of the intensity, okay, all of that life force that creates passion, laughter, joy, and aliveness in people, and sublimate it into all kinds of things. Okay, that is the goal of it. It isn't to walk around angry, but you should have it in the background, because anger is also one of the most discerning emotions we have. I like this, I don't like that. This is good for me, this isn't good for me. And one of the things that happens with addiction is people don't know how to use that feeling protectively. They tend to use it to throw in the towel, which is part of what happens with relapse. Instead of saying, no, get that the hell out of here. It's more like, you know what the heck? Okay, And if you think of the difference between those two, it's a world of difference. So helping people configure this part of themselves better tends to be a movement towards what's curative. Is that clear?
Yes.
It's clear to me. It's almost like society in a way from all physiological conditions. We usually look into the symptoms to understand the condition, and in some way, anger is something that it's almost denied as a symptom. It's almost prohibited as a kid, as a teenager, as a symptom. So it's hard to diagnose the issue because people are bottling up, and bottling up and just living in that.
So much of what we interpret as healthy is based off of things we learn at young ages, and a lot of things we learn at young ages are based off of a need for some type of societal management. If you think about school, for example, you learn to kind of shut up and do what you're told, right? That's a value. That's a very valuable citizen as a young person, is if you have those two skills. And unfortunately, we don't always then come along and say, actually, that's just a group management technique. We really want you to be in touch with yourself emotionally, be able to express yourself. And here's the cases where politeness is not as important as healthy self-expression and all that. We don't learn that sometimes. And so that's where I think we label an emotion as unhealthy instead of a choice that we make while experiencing that emotion. So, if I do something either self-destructive or lash out at other people, we say, oh, I just got angry. Actually, what we probably should say is something more along the lines of, I reacted to my feeling of anger by lashing out at someone else. And instead of utilizing the energy that came from my anger to go to that person and maybe have a constructive conversation with them and say, hey, I'm angry with you. We need to talk about this. That takes longer to say than I got angry, right? But I feel like that's kind of what we're talking about, is finding the healthy expression of an emotion, or the healthy internalized, like maybe goal or what the need that's there. Instead of saying I should never be angry, it's that how can I deal with anger in a way that is healthy?
Well, right. And even better, it just should be a fluid state of aliveness. It's just something that's helping us recognize things we like, dislike, things that are good for us, aren't good for us. I had, we had, Italian food 3 times in a row. No, let's go eat something else, right? It doesn't have to be some massive thing. And the other thing, and just to even drive this point home a little further, I think it's a big shadow side of therapists. I think one of the reasons that people don't get better is therapists like to be compassionate and empathetic, all of which is good. But frankly, the most compassionate and empathetic thing you can do is help people get better and help resolve the problems that are not getting resolved. They will feel 10 times more helped, and it's the most empathetic thing we can do. But if you avoid the aggressive drive, if you avoid their frustration and anger, you will have incomplete treatments forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really the goal of where we started with this whole conversation is, when people call and they've been in therapy, for endless years, and they just feel that they're walking the bridge, but they never get to their destination, so they feel frustrated, they feel angry, and, eventually they start numbing themselves or finding other ways to cope with whatever feelings that are frustrating them. But I think David touched the point, is especially in therapy. It's being able to talk about those things that are uncomfortable and helping people, look at it, see it, and work to get through it.
It used to be that there was this expectation of just sort of talking through. And in some cases, I feel like the modern therapy techniques have gone more into real emotion-based. And I think this is also where you see more somatic techniques that involve some kind of, like, whether it's body movement or EMDR or some of those kinds of things, internal family systems. A lot of these are, I'm just bringing up these kind of modern trauma techniques. One of the things that sets them a little bit apart from old school talk therapy is that they have more to do with centering in on the emotions. Like what you're saying, if it's like, let's see, can we access that anger? If we think about it enough, can we not just talk about what made me angry? Can I experience that anger now? Can I get there? And can I start to feel it and feel like, where does it feel? And people will do things like, how does that feel physically right now when you're angry? Put yourself in that mindset. Where does it come from? What do you need right now? Instead of just talking about something as a list of things that happened last week, and maybe more emotionally trying to have an experience in the session rather than just talking about it.
100%. One of the most helpful things I do is that I will ask direct questions. How did you feel? You were in the middle, last session, you were in the middle of telling me some things that were important and so forth. And I ended the session and, and what was that like? Oh, it was fine. I get it. We have a certain amount of time. No, they didn't like it. Mm-hmm. They didn't like it that I did it. They're probably frustrated with me that I did it, is the other side of it. And so, and you evoke this experience. And here's what happens. Here's the other side of it is, it's the brilliant thing is that, one, they trust you more. The two, they're willing to bring more of who they are, because what's entangled in their frustration and anger are the things they care about most. And so when they feel like they could have that experience with you directly, it just opens things up far more broadly and and more deeply. And then they also feel like, okay, you're not afraid. I can actually have these experiences with you. And I have all kinds of ways that I do this. It's probably the thing that I make the biggest effort not to jump over, because if you do that, the therapy tends not to get better. And by the way, this is probably kind of apropos to where we started. In my experience, what leaves things most unresolved.
And I think, again, we keep talking about anger. That is a, kind of tainted term in society. Anger often, comes from pain, right? From unresolved wounds, right? So if you could, find that wound and start healing it, you won't need that anger to protect it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's well said. That it's the door. That once you open that up, there's so much more in it, because the things that upset us are the things we care about, the things that are most true to who we are as people. And there isn't all of that energy and all that intensity there for no reason. It's there because it matters to us. And so as you get into things that matter to people, you start to also get to know who they are at a more profoundly. And so that's the doorway.
Mm-hmm.
Where they feel accepted too.
Yes.
Safe and accepted.
There's a certain level of vulnerability and honesty that we're talking about too, being able to say that. If it strikes me, like David, what you just mentioned, if my therapist has to say, hey, we're sorry, we're done, we got to go. I do understand it. And I do know we have a certain amount of time, and I don't really hold it against them, but you notice I'm doing this, like I'm tapping up here on my head. I know all that, but I don't always feel that. If I'm hitting here, on my chest here by my heart, my gut reaction is like, fine. I feel a feeling about it. And I think that the healthy connection, or the acknowledgement rather, of that emotional based reaction, let's say it is something like that, and it's not going to be a big problem. It's just going to be a thing that happens. Something kind of pissed me off, but in my head, I knew it's not really reasonable. I'm not, it's not a correct, logical statement, but it is a feeling, and I know it, and I accept it, and I move on with my day, and that's great. But if I don't acknowledge it, or I'm in denial about it, and I think this is key for addiction, is a lot of times when you're starting out with some kind of addiction treatment, we might say to someone, what does your drug use do for you? And it's like, nothing, screws up my life. It's terrible. It's awful. Gets me into trouble. That's great. That's all up here though. We know that, but that's not what I feel when I use drugs, because I wouldn't use them if that's how I really felt, if that makes sense. Does this make sense? Like, kind of trying to acknowledge that I might know that something is either bad for me, or I might know the evolved healthy behavior I should be doing. And I might really believe it, and it might even be correct, but I have to acknowledge that there's a part of me that's like, no, I had needs and I was satisfying them, and they're still important.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And the amount of times that I have had patients tell me that they have been told that if they're angry, they're especially younger patients, especially younger patients who have said, whatever treatment I'm at or something, have seen it as the fact that it means that I'm not ready to leave treatment, that I'm not getting better. Okay. Remember what drives compulsivity in human beings, okay, primarily is frustration and perceived helplessness. So when I end the session, okay, the person goes into frustration and perceived helplessness, okay, because, well, we have a specific amount of time and I'm interrupting them to some degree in the middle of what they want to continue. Now, if the next time I say, how did you feel about it? They're like, oh, I know we had a certain amount of time, right? And I say, yeah, but you drove all the way here. You're right in the middle of something. I'm taking your money afterwards, and that's the only feeling you had. It'll come out, and they'll say, well, no, actually, it does bug me. I don't like it. It's hard. Okay, now there is you are out of perceived helplessness because there's somebody who's going to hear it, and then on top of it, you tolerate the frustration, you tolerate the tensions with them, right? Okay, so there's a way forward here, and so so many people feel trapped. I guess that's what we're really trying to talk about in a general way today is how do you not feel stuck? So really it's my job to, and for you too, to make sure that there is a way forward, right? That you can help the person see the way forward, depending on what it is.
No. Well, I think that when we are looking at what people are bringing into it, especially going through the detox procedure, you've now stripped away what was the coping mechanism. I think that's why people tend to fall into, in the early days of that, of trying to be healthy and going through this treatment, trying to be sober. They fall back on coping because and that's the risk, is that long term we don't want to just replace a completely unhealthy method of coping like drug abuse with a slightly healthier or maybe even a lot healthier method of coping, unless we then are also stabilizing those things, right? Because then we are at a more healthy, stable place. It sounds like is the overall long-term objective.
But I think, Dwight, now you're talking about, a subject that we have talked numerous times. So especially when you're talking about our treatment, what we do is reverse opioid dependence, help your nervous system starts regulating, where it can start working in a natural way, where, your endorphin levels, dopamine levels, where your sleep, nutrition, your whole health starts finding a new baseline and stabilizing. But it has nothing really to do with, your past experience, trauma. Some people have, major depression due to a chemical imbalance, all those things. But again, all those things cannot be properly assessed or dealt with until detoxification and opioid dependence is reversed.
Yeah.
So it's two different things, and it's very important for patients to understand that this is the beginning of a healing process. So first we heal the body, help the nervous system, start working naturally, and now we have to heal the mind.
Right.
And that can include a number of different things. Like David said, sometimes he needs the help of a psychiatrist to deal with the physiological side of the symptoms the patient is feeling in order to uh, effectively help him emotionally. So again, getting them to cope through the symptoms in order to achieve the goal, to get to the destination that is healing, where you're not living with the pain of your past. Doesn't mean that life is going to be comfortable forever. You're truly just, healing the past so you can go forward.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, kind of apropos to this topic and what you're saying, Claire, I would say the thing that, and I never really even thought about it quite like this, is that really our treatment is both the medical part of it, and then what I do and what we do thereafter is built towards cure. It isn't built towards greater coping mechanisms, okay? And I don't want to overstate this, because, we all need coping mechanisms at times, but greater and more coping mechanisms is not the goal. The goal is to cure things, things that can be cured, to make sure they get cured, okay? Because the thing about coping mechanisms is they're all limited, and they all give way eventually, okay? None of them sort of, that's why you want to resolve everything you can. It's just a better way to live. It partly because it just leaves more of you accessible, to do other things. But our whole treatment is based on the notion of curing whatever can be cured and moving forward in that regard, rather than just creating further and further coping mechanisms. Some people aren't ready for that. Many are.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a huge difference of what we do. I think a lot of treatment centers there are truly just helping you survive. We want you to thrive. Um, we want you to go forward, be productive, healthy, happy. Although I think every treatment center in the world wants that, I think some of the protocols just truly keep you surviving and dealing.
It's a tricky thing. I think you bring up a really good point, which is that is hopefully right the goal of any treatment program. I think that one of the things that's very hard in this field is we tend to be, as going back to what you had said, David, the professionals involved, we tend to be have empathy and compassion, and we're very emotive. We're idealistic in our way we do things. We tend to hang on to things that we think help, and sometimes we don't stop to learn what helps. And that goes all the way to individualization and listening to a patient, and also learning and applying things that actually do seem to work observably with people. Not just the thing that I learned a long time ago that I thought sounded cool, and people tell me it doesn't help them as much, if that makes sense. So that's where it's a great balance of being that compassionate person. But as you put it, David, part of compassion is learning how to actually heal and help someone. Right.
It's what I would want most. I mean, if people, to sort of answer the beginning, people don't want to be in therapy or in treatment forever. Mm-hmm. They don't want to. What they want to do is get better. They want to feel like things are getting resolved, and it's the greatest gift, and maybe the most compassionate thing you can do is help them, and at least be able to clearly articulate what's possible and what isn't, and begin to understand that with them. So just even within that realm, it's like I was talking about anxiety. Look, everybody who's alive has some anxiety, everybody. So it isn't something that is that's not just cured as if you will never have any anxiety again. That's unrealistic. That said, people have it, there's a big spectrum, but you can learn how to manage it, and you can also learn how to resolve the things within it that can be resolved. So, they also go hand in hand, but becoming clear about that, it is a type of cure.
Yeah. Well, it's all well said, and these are things that hopefully those of you that are out there, as we always like to remind, if this is something that you wonder, does this touch my life? The answer is yes, it does. Whether it's something something was coming back through on somewhere. Anyway, my voice was coming back at me, so I'm going to take another little run at that. As I like to remind people, whenever we talk about these things, if you wonder, does this touch my life? And hopefully you're already aware that it does, because if you yourself are not actively going through this right now, then you know someone who is, and you may not know who they are or of them. But if you're listening to this, chances are you are aware, and you do know that these are things that are necessary and helpful. I hope that everybody out there will take the time to think about this, to share this, and to let people know that these resources are out there. We may all have struggles and we may suffer at times, but we don't have to suffer alone, and we don't have to keep suffering. That's one of our main messages on the program here. And because of that, we definitely want to hear from you. Anybody who's out there that is listening, you can reach out to us. You can go to opiates.com to learn more about the Waismann Method approach and to contact us. You can contact us at info@opiates.com or at Opiates on social media. This show is a production of the Waismann Method Opioid Treatment Specialists and Rapid Detox. The music for our intro is the song Medical by Clean Mind Sounds. And with here with Clare Waismann and David Livingston, I just want to take the minute to thank everybody for listening and for being part of this. I want to remind everyone to keep asking questions, because when you ask questions, you'll find answers. And whenever you find answers, you can find hope. So long, everybody. Have a good time. We'll be back with you again soon.